All right. So Australia. Now there's only a very few regions in Australia, and kind of small places where relative that things are grown. But I mean, I don't know if you've seen Australia on a map, but I mean it's a darn big place. But everyone kind of thinks of Australia as like one one wine region, you know. Much like sometimes it's thought of as America as one big wine region, but then you start to kind of dive into, what's in California versus Washington and, other places that grow. And so, but the wines that are grown in Australia really don't have a large variety to them in terms of especially what they're producing that gets set for export. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting on the edges of the continent for our whites. So and I'll just I'll be going in order of the wines that we have. And so the first on here is the Miles from Nowhere, which comes from the Western Australia region, in particular the Margaret River. Now, as you can see from there, go ahead and zoom it in for you. As you can see, you have Margaret River that's right on the edge of the coast. Its closest big metropolitan area is Perth. And the area is pretty warm, but tempered by this kind of like maritime breeze that's kind of coming in here from the Indian Ocean. And really, they kind of grow the kitchen sink of Australia. That would be like the Chardonnay, your Semillon, Sauvignon Blanc, Cab, Shiraz, and Merlot. Though you might only really get to see the whites exported to a lot of your major retailers. I mean, and as you can see, it's called Margaret River because, well, that's where the Margaret River kind of dumps out the last of its, all that soil that's been accumulating on its way to the ocean. Now, next on the list is actually it's kind of both Bunkhouse and Laneway, which is what's the whole region is called Southeastern Australia. But that encompasses quite a few provinces. I don't know my Australian statehood or whatever to I can't remember if it's a province or a state or whatever. But Bunkhouse in particular comes from this kind of large area that's actually got the this right here set to it, which is this New South Wales. And that's really close to here, Sydney. And the one that we're really looking for in New South Wales that Bunkhouse is in is the Hunter Valley. Now, Hunter Valley Semillon. So here's New South Wales. This part right here is Hunter Valley. And it's considered like one of the great unique wines of Australia. With its cooler year vintages, highly sought after. Apparently, even ones from like 77 are still kind of like really drinkable and one of those ones that people will pay lots and lots of money in order to get the chance to partake. Now, New South Wales though is really hot and really humid, with some of the warmest climates in Australia. And on top of that, it's really flat, which if it wasn't for the humidity would be great for growing reds. That's like Lodi and Paso Robles. Both of those are really flat places, really hot, but they're also really dry, which, you know, allows the grapes to kind of struggle. And so therefore all the grape berries that are on there are much more condensed. And so you have a much more powerful kind of, you know, taste to the wine that's being created. Instead, because of all that moisture, it leads to thinner reds from the excess of waters. Whites are a lot more forgiving in that aspect, because really whites, on the other hand, are, you know, all that really matters with them is much more the acidity. But some have capitalized on that heat as you move inland. So like this Riverina, a little bit more to the west, the winery that put Australia on the map for regular wine drinkers is Yellowtail. And that is in Yenda, which is kind of, you know, in this area here. Now, you can kind of see, you know, a little bit of this you know, pink area right here. That's the next area that we're going to be talking about, which is where Laneway is from. Still part of Southeastern Australia, but it's another region called Victoria, which is this one here. And Laneway is in the Goulburn Valley, which is this area right here north of Melbourne. It typically has seasons that are really hot, which makes for some really decent red production. And them, along with Rutherglen here, they actually make some fortified dessert wines that are locally called stickies. So if you've ever heard of stickies, might want to try it. Actually, I'm not sure if like Yulumba or any of the other Australian ports are referred to that or not, but I do know that, yeah, some of their other fortified dessert wines, just look for stickies. Now, just to the north of all of that is this Murray Darling. Now that place super dry. They actually have to irrigate that in order to you know, grow anything here. But I don't know, this line right here, that's the dividing line between Victoria and South Australia. Now South Australia, that's where they make like a lot of your really powerful reds, or really well-known reds. But that same soil is up here in Murray Darling. It's just that you know, because it's from Victoria, they do a lot more mass wine production and grape growing that then gets distributed elsewhere for people to make wine with. Now, while Yellowtail Shiraz may have the attention of like the minivan soccer moms, South Australia, which is here, is where all the big names are at. Two examples are our own that we're drinking tonight, which is the Mollydooker, and a really famous one, which is Penfolds. Penfolds Grange is still one of it's like the top rated wine from Australia. And a real key to this area in particular is, and the history that's tasted, is that South Australia banned all of its like wine movement in about 1874. So if you remember hearing me talk about, if you remember Phyloxera and that Phyloxera Blight, where it's this louse that kind of goes through the root of these vines and just, you know, kills, and it pretty much wiped out wine production throughout the whole rest of the world until they started grafting American grape rootstock on, and but because they had squashed this so long ago, they still have original rootstock from original rootstock, which that means that they're still very susceptible to it. But no, they've got vines out there that are like 100 to 150 years old. And it's not to say that they don't get infestations, but yeah, they got like some of the strictest quarantine regulations for like moving vine material. So, you know, them trying to bring in, say, a clone of, I don't know, a Pinot Noir or something to that effect from, say, France. It's got to go through like super quarantine, and it's got to be, you know, like looked at for months before it's even allowed to enter that country, just because of this area, actually most of Australia, because they still have all this original rootstock. Now, also, due to this little pocket that you can kind of see here, I mean, this whole little pocket here, what that does is it's kind of like a really calming area. And so they've got like a Mediterranean climate that makes for pretty comparable to like southern France. And so that's why they're also able to grow all these like big Syrah grapes. And well, I will say Syrah. Syrah and Shiraz are the exact same grape. I can't remember the guy's name, but he brought it over in like the 1800s, the Syrah grape. And somewhere along the translation, you know, Australians being Australians, just wanted to give it a whole new weird name. So Shiraz stuck. But just remember that it is the Syrah. Syrah and Shiraz, exact same thing. Now, all of these areas that you're seeing here in South Australia make really great reds. But in the 70s, a lot of the Shiraz vines were kind of ripped out because there was like a white wine craze back then. And that's where also the popularity of like the Hunter Valley Semillon and the Sauv Blanc also kind of came into effect. But the most important of these areas is Barossa Valley. This little nugget right here, that's where all the big boys are located. And that's where you do see those vines that are reaching, you know, 100 to 150 years old. Like look at that big gnarled guy there. I'm not sure how many, you know, wineries or vineyards people have gone to, but, you know, vineyards, vines that are 10, 20, 30 years old, you know, they might be as thick as even, you know, like a wine bottle. No, those vines there, they don't really have a size comparison there, but I mean those things are like built like trees. They are just these gnarled hunks that make some of the best, you know, wines. I know that the closest they get is, I think, in Lodi. They have some of the oldest when you'll see ancient Zin or ancient vine Zin, and those are like 90 to 100 years old. But then you have these guys that are, you know, 100 to 150.